Previously, on Overcome Babylon.
There's fingerprints on the crime scene of what's going on here. There's fingerprints, and I'm gonna connect the dots here for you if you haven't done it already. It's Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum. Okay, it's Klaus Schwab. He's the main guy. This is the head honcho. I mean, he's literally dressed like Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. This is the guy orchestrating the event. We have a graduate of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader program, and I talk about Klaus Schwab a lot in my book. Klaus Schwab, in case you didn't know, has a lot to do with prophecy, and so many people are sleeping on this because they don't know what time it is. You got to know the prophetic time clock of the Most High God. When you do, you understand that Macron, he's really just taking orders from the WEF. Welcome back to Overcome Babylon. I'm Abraham Ojeda, as always. And what I'm seeing here is that just a few days before the Abomination of Desolation, literally 3 days before the Abomination, you got the biggest movers and shakers on the entire global scale meeting. So before we start talking about what's going to be happening this September, please like, share, comment, subscribe. What we're going to be talking about today is heavily, should we say, censored. The enemy definitely doesn't want you to know what we're talking about today, because we're going to continue talking about France in Bible prophecy, and obviously France is just one of the many important people groups in end times prophecy. America is mentioned in Bible prophecy, the UK, Canada, so many different people groups are mentioned in end times prophecy. And again, that's why I'm taking the time to do this video today. That's why I'm taking the time to do basically a part 2 of what's going on in France, because you and I, God's people, need to know what is going on. And sadly, too many people are not teaching this stuff. I want to start today with a quote. You know, even though Yale has a few skeletons in its closet, there was one particular professor here, Charles Totten, who said, "I can never be too thankful to the Almighty to show me the difference between the two houses of Israel. The very understanding of this difference is the key by which almost the entire Bible becomes intelligible, and I cannot state too strongly that the man who has not yet seen that the Israel of Scripture is totally distinct from the Jewish people is yet in the very infancy, the mere alphabet of biblical study, and that to this day the meaning of 7/8 of the Bible is shut to his understanding." And so that was a professor from Yale. He was alive from 1851 through 1908, so back in the day, right? But I cannot tell you how true that quote is today. So many people are trying to teach Bible prophecy, and they have no idea about the two houses of Israel. They have no idea of the people groups represented in heraldry, like what we talked about very last episode, talking about France. If you didn't check that out, if you missed that, go check that out. All right, so today, well, let's follow up on that. What's going on in France? Like, it's burning down to the ground, and just to nobody's surprise, the violence spread to Switzerland and Belgium. Switzerland and Belgium are now, basically, they're having their rioting and kind of that chaos. The mayhem continues. But what was Emmanuel Macron, president of France, what was his response, right? That it's social media and video games causing these problems, but of course, now French cops, this was just released, French cops can now secretly activate phone cameras, microphones, and GPS to spy on citizens, right? So Macron calls for censorship. He says, you know, social media is the problem. That's why the riots and everything is getting out of control. That's why there's automatic assault rifles on the streets, because of smartphones and social media. So now all of a sudden there's this expansion of government power. Now all of a sudden look, I know I didn't necessarily spell it out last episode, but you have the mass migration of certain people groups from North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, etc., and they have a certain ideology, and their ideology is not to assimilate and become French and become peaceful, loving citizens of France, right? And so this was done on purpose, bringing in a bunch of people that don't care to assimilate. They're just coming in. This is all by design. This is a big plan. This has been going on for years, right? We're just finally starting to see the fruit of all these decisions, these policy decisions, and things like this. And now, out of the chaos of what's going on, we need more censorship. We need to activate phone cameras and GPS. We need to be able to spy on people. And again, history is repeating itself. We saw the exact same thing in the United States. What happened after 9/11, right? Even Even mainstream news will admit this to you. This is from Time. 9/11 radically expanded the power of the U.S. government. This is mainstream news. Bush authorized spying on Americans, right? A new secretive military tribunal system and detaining men from Muslim and Arab countries and all these kinds of things, right? There's way more to it, right, with the Patriot Act and everything else. This is the playbook. This is the playbook of the hidden hand of global government. I'm telling you, if you haven't looked into this topic, this is how it works. Crisis, and out of the crisis, there is an opportunity for expansion of power. And that is exactly, again, I talk about this pretty often, but that's exactly what Klaus Schwab says in his books and his writings. I'm telling you, these things are so important for us to understand in order to understand Bible prophecy. Again, the only reason I talk about agendas, the only reason I talk about all these big geopolitical things and schemes and stuff is because I want to understand Bible prophecy. I want to be able to explain Bible prophecy. I want to open up my Bible and be able to make sense of it all. Because again, these things written in Daniel about the one-horned male goat, these things written about all these different people groups and events, they weren't written for a how should we say, a select group of privileged people to be able to know this stuff. It was made to be understood by God's people. And so today we're going to understand some very important things, because something's happening in September of this year that's pretty significant, pretty important, and we need to be paying attention to what's going to happen this September, okay? In fact, I'm going to show you how September is consistently a very important month in Bible prophecy. Apparently, September is really important because, again, history is playing out once again. So let's go take a look at Klaus's book, Klaus Schwab. I talk about him a lot, right? And I really want to present something today that if you haven't read his books, if you haven't seen his work, this is what he says on page 66 of his infamous Great Reset book. Again, this is the battle plan, this is the blueprint, right? Looking to the future, governments will most likely, but with the different degrees of intensity, decide that it's in the best interest of society to rewrite some of the rules of the game to permanently increase their role, not temporarily, permanently. This is the battle plan. This is how this works, right? This is the mentality. This is important for us to understand, especially as what we're going to talk about what's going to happen later this September, and it's important for us to understand these things, okay? Big events happening this September. It's important for us to know how these things kind of work, how these people think, how they game plan and battle plan and concoct these big schemes. How is it that a small group of elitist people can control populations and stuff like this? It really is fascinating. It would be more fascinating if it weren't real, if we're just a movie or just whatever. But this is our reality. This is our world, right? And so again, on looking at the Great Reset book, right? This is page 102. Klaus Schwab literally says that we need to make good use, right? Enlightened leaders need to make good use of the pandemic by not letting the crisis go to waste. And that's exactly, again, so that with this idea, not letting a crisis go to waste, of course they're going to create crises in order to permanently increase the power of the establishment. Does that make sense? I mean, this is how this works. So I want to direct your attention to something. Before we talk about what's going to go on this September, let's take a look at page 186 of my book. Again, this is extremely important stuff to understand. The covenant made with many has already come and gone, and mainstream Christianity didn't even notice. Again, this is because of the word Shabuah in Daniel 9:24. People do not understand what the word Shabuah is from a Hebrew perspective. 100% pure Hebrew analysis of the scriptures reveals to us that the word Shabuah, it's a little bit different than what people think with this whole 7-year interpretation, 7 this, 7 that. No, it's not a covenant made with many for 7 years. It's a covenant of 49 years, and it's already happened. Okay? It began on June 5th, 1972, and guess what? 49 years later, exactly 49 years later, let me just go ahead and jump over to page 1. We just looked at page 168. 49 years times 360 days per year gives you 17,640 days, and you will arrive at September 21st, 2020. And it just so happens that the covenant made with many ended. And when you look at actually what happened in the news cycle, what was going on back then, right? A lot of us weren't paying attention like we should have because we didn't understand the prophecy. But you look at the WHO website, and there's literally 2/3. By the way, that's a majority. 2/3 is a majority. 2/3 of the global population are now committed because 156 economies signed up for the Gavi Alliance. A new covenant made with many began. A new covenant made with many began that superseded the original one. I explain all this in my book. I cannot get into it in great detail here for obvious reasons. But something else happened on the 21st of September 2020, which I did not mention in my book, which is also extremely significant. Again, it's already 444 pages. I wish I would have squeezed this in here, but hey, it is what it is, right? Hopefully you can forgive me because I try to go into really a lot of detail. But the UN General Assembly met on September 21st and adopted a resolution, and it was the strengthening of the United Nations system, which also coincided with the Gavi, with the rollout of the jab and the whole nine, okay? And there's a declaration of the 75th anniversary of the UN, and they talk about how they're gonna strengthen their resolve to make sure that they're more crisis ready and they're able to handle things like pandemics better. You can read about all this, right? Go do your own research on it. But one thing that I want to make really abundantly clear about this new covenant made with many that superseded and did away with the old covenant of UNEP, the UN Environmental Program. The new covenant made with many that began exactly on September 21st of 2020, not only with Gavi and COVAX, but also this resolution. Well, guess what they talk about, which ties directly into what we're going to be talking about today. They're talking about how they are going to be stepping up their efforts for the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And they say it is our roadmap and its implementation is a necessity for our survival. Urgent efforts are required. Therefore, we are not here to celebrate, we are here to take action. So they strengthened their resolve for the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Well, let's go take a look at what that really means. This actually was initiated not in 2020, this was initiated in 2015. And the 2030 Agenda, on paper, hey, it sounds pretty good. Yeah, sustainable, extreme poverty. Let's go ahead and solve the world's greatest problems. But as we know, it's all double speak. It's all backwards. It's all subliminal. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's going to be happening this September. Again, this is huge. Not only does this give more weight to September, this September being a significant month. I've already talked about the Abomination of Desolation. We've got like 75 days now until the Abomination of Desolation, September 22nd, 2023. Again, get Bible Prophecy Secrets as that doesn't make sense. September 22nd. Well, like literally, what is that? A few days before September 22nd, on September 18th through 19th, there's the Sustainable Development Goals meeting, the summit in New York, and they're going to be talking about how they're going to mark this new phase of accelerated progress towards Sustainable Development Goals. And, like I said, it sounds all good. 17 goals, no poverty, no hunger. By the way, Jesus said the hungry and the poor are always going to be with you. And he's not a liar. So you can't get rid of poverty. You can't get rid of hunger. Apart from the King of Kings, apart from his kingship, right? Yeshua is king. Let's go. So these are impossible things. So what's the real agenda, right? You can't actually solve these things. You cannot. So what's the real agenda? I'll leave that in your court to discover and dig into that. But I can already tell you, they're getting ready. Just like, before 9/11, powerful people were meeting behind closed doors. Powerful people had advanced knowledge of 9/11. Powerful people did not show up to the World Trade Centers before 9/11 because they knew they had advanced knowledge. They had prior knowledge. They were forewarned. They were told not to fly. People were excluded from flying in some cases. And they're talking about sustainable development, how they're pushing up their efforts, strengthening this new covenant made with many. UNEP is kind of pushed to the side because now this has become the new covenant made with many. This, Gavi, COVAX, is all related. It's all interconnected. And we're going to see how this all plays out. But I'm telling you that this summit ties into the Abomination of Desolation, something to absolutely keep our eyes open for because, this is what they say about it. This marks the midpoint of implementing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda agreed in 2015. Heads of state and government will gather at the UN headquarters in New York to follow up and review the implementation of all these things, right? This is a very significant meeting to be paying attention to as students of prophecy, as watchmen. You got to be paying attention to this. And they're already laying down the groundwork. They're already saying, hey, we're going to have a far-reaching plan to secure emergency powers that would allow a global body to lead a common agenda for all nations during complex global shocks, such as a new pandemic, or perhaps a nuclear event, a nuclear war. Perhaps they're getting ready for what we know is coming, because the scriptures already told us in Luke 21, Jerusalem is going to be surrounded by armies. The scriptures already told us that you better run for the hills, those in Judea. You better be running for the hills because it's not looking good. Yeshua said that. And so it looks like they're gearing up with these new pacts, these meetings, these events, the SDGs. It's all a disguise for more power, more emergency power, more globalism, because we're getting ready for the Abomination of Desolation now. See, the paperwork, the groundwork, the meetings, the closed door, everything is being really upped, revamped, and getting ready for one of the biggest events on the world stage, set to happen on September 22nd, 2023. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look into it. But I'm predicting a nuclear event, or at least something, if it's not exactly nuclear, it's going to be really, really big in Jerusalem this September. Keep your eyes peeled. Of course, Klaus is heavily involved with this. Klaus, if you didn't know, by the way, Klaus, he takes credit for the limits to growth and the Club of Rome, and giving the Club of Rome a platform. If we just go back to that UNEP covenant, you don't believe me? You don't believe my words that Klaus is actually behind the Club of Rome? Here's a clip. Listen to what he has to say.
I've worked on climate change for 25 years.
I worked on climate change since 73.
So you
Just to
worked on
tell
it
you,
longer than
because
I
I was the person who gave the Club of Rome the first big platform. Because I was the person who gave the Club of Rome the first big platform.
And so, all the way from the UNEP covenant made with many, to the World Economic Forum, to now the SDGs, the 2030 agenda, everything, Klaus has been instrumental in this. And let's just see how this all plays out. Let's continue to pray that we're counted worthy to escape all of these things and to stand before the Son of Man, just like it says in Luke 21:36. Make that your prayer. Let's keep being watchmen. Let's keep an eye out. But I'm telling you, this September, there's big stuff headed our way. All right, so I'm Abraham again. Thank you for checking out this video. Please like, share, and let's spread the word. We got to get people woken up to the fact that we are living authoritatively 110,000% in the last days. We are in the 70th week of Daniel. 2020 was the middle of the week, and we just got a few years left before this whole thing is over. So let's be ready, and let's get ready for Yeshua's return.